The Console Wars, a conflict that has been going on since the dawn of time, also known as the 70s.
Hey!
Your fish are dead.
A tale of rivalry, betrayal, teraflops, video games, life, and not death because it's not a real war. You know about them, I know about them, your mom knows about them, even your dog has probably heard some stuff. Internet commenters definitely know about them.
X-Fart series.
But are they necessary? Like, should we be thankful to these companies for making consoles, or should we all just cast our Wii U's into the fire, get a PC, and just play Undertale for the rest of our days? Well, maybe. But hey, let's dig a little deeper before we go burning all our ooyahs.
Ooyah!
Okay, so first we need to go back to the year of our Lord, 1972. That marks the start of the first console generation. Video games were very new and very popular at the time, so every company on Earth wanted to get in, and a ton of consoles were released.
It's free real estate.
Magnavox Odyssey 1 and 2, Coleco Telstar, Color TV Game, Intellivision, Vectrix, ColecoVision, Atari Home Pong, Atari 2600, Bally Astrocade, Emerson Arcadia 2001, and of course, how could I forget the Fairchild Semiconductors Fairchild Channel F, like, yo, what the f***, man, too many consoles. Atari completely dominated this period with the 2600, to the point that it can't really be considered a war. It was more like a strange fight between a bunch of drunk dudes at a bar, where Atari had already left with all the girls for a pool party at his mansion, and the rest are left trying to pick up the last girl that eventually turns out to just be, well...
This is a kilt, and I'm not a girl! You're as close as we'll ever get! Get him! Get him!
Most consoles sold very poorly, and this massive oversaturation inevitably ended with an epic 180 laser flip collapse of the video game industry in 1983, with the debris from the explosion finally putting most of these newly created companies out of their misery. So yeah, not a great start, but hey, nobody said that convincing people to buy these weird video game machines was gonna be easy. For the third generation, the US console industry was basically a zombie wasteland after the market crash, so the main players had to come from elsewhere, more specifically Japan, where the first real chapter of the console wars would play out. The battle between Nintendo and Sega spun over 2 generations, with Nintendo's family-friendly approach giving them a head start with the NES, and Sega catching up with the Genesis thanks to becoming the edgy, cool alternative to the Super Nintendo on marketing towards teenagers.
Say it.
I wasn't born yet at the time, but I find this period of the console war to be the most fun, with wide open punches flying both ways, mainly from Sega towards Nintendo, and with an aggressive marketing campaign that kept directly comparing the two. Sega does what Nintendo don't, Genesis blasts processing power, and Sonic just straight up calling Mario a lame-ass dude are just a few examples of this strategy.
Why can't it be more like that nice boy Mario? Oh! Little brat!
But we can't stop here, since while this showdown was happening, the 5th generation of consoles was being developed, which brought along an unexpected new player into the war.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Pack up your stuff. I got a little surprise for you here. Check it out. What do you think about that? I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. You're hurting my elbow.
Sony, another Japanese company, wanted to step into the video game industry, and after being rejected to collaborate with Nintendo, decided to launch the first PlayStation on their own. But Nintendo would live to regret turning them down, since with a similar marketing strategy to Sega, their new mascot Crash Bandicoot, and a great video game library, Sony ended up dominating the 5th generation, selling more than triple the consoles as their competitors. Meanwhile, in the wasteland of the Western market, Atari was still refusing to meet the maker, and kept launching consoles that kept totally sinking, until finally giving up after the flop of the Atari Jaguar. But like a majestic phoenix, the Western console industry was reborn from its ashes through Microsoft, enlisting for the console war, armed with the Xbox, and a little game called Halo Combat Evolved as its console seller. This meant that for the 6th generation we would have 4 main console contenders, and as history has taught us, too many consoles isn't a great thing for the market, and it turned out that 4 was at least one too many. While Nintendo once again shot themselves in the foot by making their console look like a futuristic lunchbox and using toy discs instead of DVDs, the one that ended up going to a farm up north with your childhood pet turtle was Sega, after the absolute failure of the Dreamcast. The PlayStation 2 once again completely dominated the generation, becoming the best-selling console ever, and Xbox and GameCube did just about well enough to have another go for the 7th gen. Microsoft gained a lot of momentum with the Xbox 360, and with Sony losing steam, it ended up selling just about the same as the PS3. Meanwhile, Nintendo found great success with the Wii by switching audiences and selling consoles to your grandma instead of you.
We would like to play.
For the next gen, Nintendo kept capitalizing on grandma's newfound passion for bowling with the Wii U, but this time around, they tried to convince her to buy an iPad.
Grandma, tilted fucking forward, you dumb fuck! Oh my god!
That obviously didn't go too well, and after a couple years, Nintendo gave up on trying to teach grandma how to make a Zoom call, and was able to bounce right back up with the release of the Switch.
Have you ruined everything for us? Ever played a video game before in your life?
Meanwhile, Xbox One tried to pull a 720 switcheroo on its player base by declaring used games illegal and watching you 24/7 through your Kinect to make sure you didn't buy any, you naughty Xbox players.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Are you saying boo or boo-earns?
Needless to say, that stunt ended with a faceplant and handed the generational crown over to the PS4, without Sony really needing to do anything.
They can trade in the game at retail, sell it to another person, lend it to a friend, or keep it forever.
They love me.
And that brings us to today, with both the PS5 and Xbox Series X about to launch, and with me making this weird video to talk about it. Okay, so now that we're on the same page, what do I really think about this whole console wars thing? Is it good or is it bad? Well, it's mostly just stupid, but also complicated, so let me illustrate it with 2 pros, 2 cons, and a dumb conclusion.
This is where the fun begins.
Pro number 1. Exclusive games. This one is pretty obvious. One of the best ways to sell a console is by having great games that are exclusive for it. Without consoles, we wouldn't have Mario, Zelda, Halo, God of War, The Last of Us, or Knack. And you know we'd be completely lost without Knack.
Is red bad? Oh yeah, red's bad.
This contest is over. Give that man the $10,000.
And the same goes for many indie games that wouldn't have the proper funding without these companies. But that takes us straight into con number 1. Exclusive games. I see what you did there. Exclusives can be a blessing and a curse for video games. While many of them are great, their existence also means that if you want to play every game out there, you're also gonna need to find every last stranded penny under the couch. Things get even worse with classic games, with a ridiculously overpriced second-hand market, and some companies holding these classics hostage so they can resell, remaster, and remake them over and over. You're likely gonna need another mortgage and to sell good old laddie over here to an eccentric billionaire if you want to afford playing Mario 64 for the 20th time, or at least if you want to do it legally. Things seem to be getting a bit better lately with backwards compatibility and services like PlayStation Now and Xbox Game Pass, but it's still a big problem that makes preservation of classic games a very hard task. And now we have pro number 2 of the console wars, expanding the audience. So that last problem we talked about could be solved if every game was for PC only and everyone just became part of the PC master race.
Peasants, I bring news! Join me in PC gaming and ascend to godhood! For you are weak and I am mighty!
But it's also true that PC gaming is more daunting, expensive, and harder to get into than consoles, and video games wouldn't be as big or popular as they are today without that easier, more marketable option. Consoles offer a streamlined experience for casual players at a more affordable price, since console companies can lose money selling them and make it back in game sales. With consoles, you can just plug and play, without worrying about specs, software, or whether or not your graphics card has enough rainbows on it to play My Little Pony Friendship is Magic in 4K 60 frames per second. This has helped video games develop at a faster rate and become more ambitious, since more money is to be made from a wider player base. Not to mention that competition between companies instead of a monopoly is always beneficial for the consumer, aka
us, the gamer girls.
But that leaves us with the last con: segmenting the audience. The console war operates on the basis that most people can't afford to buy all these machines. If consoles cost $5 and came free with your Taco Bell order, there would be no console wars. But they don't. And that creates a decision for someone trying to get into video games, with the problem that some decisions might end up feeling like the wrong ones. And I'm not talking about mean internet commenters. We all know those people are idiots. They side with a company that just wants their money and defend it to death in exchange for basically nothing, even though that company will surely make bad decisions like any other. I'm talking about regular people that buy a video game console and might end up feeling like they bought the wrong one. I'll illustrate this better by sharing a personal story with you guys. I used to always be that kid that had a different console than the rest of his friends. My first console was a GameCube when everyone had a PS2, but that was no big deal. I absolutely loved it, and it just meant that I was out of the loop for some conversations at school. Friends coming over for couch co-op was more exciting too, since we all had different games, and my older cousin ended up giving me his PS2 when he got a PS3, so I also got to enjoy that console. The problem came with the 7th gen. All my friends were getting PS3s, and I was saving up to buy my own. But PS3 was expensive, so I got to an agreement with my parents that if I saved up half the money, they would pay for the other half as a Christmas present. So at last, on Christmas 2008, I gave my savings to my parents and they went to the store. I would only have to wait a couple of days to finally, once and for all, unwrap my brand new Xbox 360. Apparently, they talked to an employee at the store who told them it was basically the same thing but cheaper, which was mostly true, and with the same money they bought the Xbox with a bunch of games instead of the PS3. Obviously, I wasn't going to react like a spoiled kid and be all like, "What the hell, mom? You bought the wrong console." No, I was super thankful to have a new console and was actually pretty stoked to have more games than I expected. But it did mean that, once again, I was the dude with the other console. And this time around, that kinda sucked, since online multiplayer was starting to become huge. So while I really enjoyed my time shredding in Skate 2, stabbing necks in Assassin's Creed, and destroying locust goons on Gears of War, I could never join all my friends who teamed up online almost every day after school to collectively 360 no-scope blow some heads off in Call of Duty.
I'm a pussy that use riot shield.
I really loved my Xbox single-player games, and I also had a lot of fun inviting friends over for some local Halo multiplayer, but it did feel like I was really missing out at times. So much so that some years later, in 2012, I ended up selling my 360 and all my games to buy a PS3. While I was finally able to have fun playing awesome games like Battlefield 3 online with my friends, the transition was bittersweet since I lost a lot of games I loved, and I also kind of sucked at online shooters. Don't get me wrong, we had some super fun times playing and I eventually got better, but I ended up not loving that type of game as much as I thought I would. Feeling separated from your friends because of your console choice wouldn't be a problem if console wars weren't a thing. Nowadays, segmentation still happens, although it's starting to get better thanks to a lot of games having crossplay between different platforms. My friends and I all have PS4s now, and although college and work make things more difficult than high school, we still get together to play online from time to time. And not only shooters anymore, but yeah, when we do play shooters, I have a lot of fun, but I still get dunked on. But that's the beauty of video games, that they're able to bring us all together in the love we share for headshots, triple jumps, and falcon punches, and it's a shame that we can at times feel so divided by them. And that brings us right into my dumb conclusion, which is, don't worry about it, dude. If you haven't noticed by now, I find this console war thing to be pretty dumb, and many people take it way too seriously. Consoles are just out there as an option with some benefits and other detriments, and if you like them, that's great, and if you don't, that's cool too. Maybe it's just me, but it does make me happy that so many people out there like video games enough to buy an expensive machine just to play them. So I guess you could say I'm grateful consoles exist. And no matter what we think, it looks like console wars aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So we might as well embrace them and have fun watching the shit show. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one has more teraflops, a faster SSD, or blast processing power. What really matters is that you enjoy your time playing them. So, play the games you want to play, on whatever system you want to play on, have fun, don't be mean, and don't get too invested. Whatever you choose is fine as long as it makes you happy. I'll still love you no matter what, even if you decide to play on Stadia. Anyways, that's it for this video. Feel free to subscribe and comment how stupid I am and how much whatever console you hate sucks. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Happy console wars!
Let's go cross the line. Let's go waste our time. I like how she looks. Let's divorce, she's mine.